Sparks flew when Katie Bointner met Army Staff Sergeant John Blauvelt. He worked as an Army recruiter in local high schools. She worked at a sandwich shop next to his office in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. Katie fell hard even after learning that John was married and had a child.
She loved him so much and wanted to be a family with him and his young daughter.
And Katie made her dream come true, eventually marrying John. But mere weeks after the I-do's, trouble was already percolating when police say John Blauvelt started throwing underage parties at his house.
There were some minors in the house and some others that were 17 or older.
It seemed John wasn't only recruiting for the U.S. Army. He was recruiting for his own pleasure, and Katie didn't like that.
A lot of the kids that Hannah was hanging around were hanging out at his house.
One of the partygoers is 17-year-old Hannah Thompson. Her worried parents alert police that their daughter is spending a lot of time over at the Blauvelts.
By South Carolina state law, she was an adult technically, but we wanted to make sure that she was okay.
When police pay a visit to the house, sure enough, on that very night, there's a party going on, and John Blauvelt's in trouble.
He was subsequently charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor, several counts, because there was alcohol and marijuana being provided to the kids by John Blauvelt.
Katie is nowhere near the party. In fact, soon after John is charged, police ask her what she knows. Katie reveals something shocking.
According to her statement, he pointed the gun at her and said that he would kill her, and then he pointed the gun at himself and said that he would kill himself, and then he left the residence telling her that he would kill everybody that she knew.
Now Blauvelt is even deeper in trouble. Police book John on a domestic violence charge. Katie moves back to her mother's house, and their sweet but short young love crumbles.
I was just so glad to have her back again and try to have a mother-daughter bond and do things with her, go to the movies and just hang out.
John bailed out of jail, but faced a no-contact order with Katie. Patricia Piver says her daughter was more than happy to comply.
She'd asked me to help her find lawyers and look them up and try to find somebody to get a divorce. She'd had it with him.
But just when Katie seemed determined to get her life back on track, something awful happens in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. Katie goes missing. Sensing foul play, friends immediately begin searching for her. One of the places they look is an old abandoned house out in the woods in nearby Simpsonville. Katie and her friends used to hang out there when they were kids. In the cellar, they notice a pile of construction debris on the floor, but something doesn't look right, so they check underneath. A horrific discovery. They find their longtime friend lifeless on the floor, stabbed multiple times, and left to die in this dark and foreboding place.
My friend, she's been missing for, I think, 30 hours now, and we found her in the bottom part in the basement, covered up with pieces of wood.
Was she still alive?
No, sir. No response.
So she was pale and unresponsive?
Yes.
I don't know what she went through. The pain. What she must have been screaming for him to stop. In the mortuary, the man told us it took them 5 hours to fix her up, to make her presentable. And it still didn't look like her. The makeup they used was so dark, and they said they had to do that to cover up everything that was done to her.
Investigators pay their first visit to the house of John Blauvelt. This time, he's in more than trouble. And not only do they find John, they find 17-year-old Hannah Thompson. Police needed answers about Katie Blauvelt's murder, but when they show up at husband John's house with the questions,
Hannah was with him.
Now John and Hannah are on the hot seat.
She and John Blauvelt had both been asked questions about Katie's murder.
Investigators soon gather enough evidence to charge John Blauvelt in the murder of his wife, but just when his arrest is imminent, John Blauvelt is gone. and so is 17-year-old Hannah Thompson. Investigators don't know if Hannah is with John willingly or not. They do know she could be in grave danger.
I don't think it's a huge leap of assumption to think that this child is left with this man that's 28 years old, 11 years her senior, and knowing the fact that he was married to another young girl who was also reported missing and was found some 32 hours later, murdered and in the cellar of a house, an abandoned house.
Hannah's family was always concerned after learning she attended parties at John's house.
Red flags started going up. She was skipping classes, and then there was a argument at the house between us and Hannah, and she left home for about a week. And we didn't know at that time, but she was at John's house that week. I talked to a friend of theirs after they disappeared who said that they were in a relationship. So I imagine there's a sexual relationship there as well as romantic.
There wasn't anything law enforcement could do. The legal age of consent in South Carolina is 16.
My husband lost it when he heard. I mean, he wanted to go to John's house and confront him. I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. You know, you might end up in jail yourself or killed, because we knew that John had guns.
Soon after Hannah disappears, her cell phone mysteriously ends up in her family's mailbox.
It had been wiped clean, reset. I assumed when she left it in the mailbox, it was because she didn't want us to try to find her. Then we started thinking she maybe didn't want anybody to see some of the texts that she had on her phone.
At one point, Christy is relieved when her daughter texts her from a burner cell phone that she's okay and that she's still in South Carolina. But police tell her Hannah is nowhere near her home state.
We've had information that he's been seen in California, in Arizona, New Mexico, along those areas.
So she was texting me just lies, I guess.
Since John was military trained in survival skills and technically AWOL, U.S. Marshals are brought in to join what soon becomes a nationwide manhunt.
We want Hannah returned home safely. That's our #1 priority, and the safe capture of John Blauvelt.
In a stunning turn of events, police would get exactly that. After 7 weeks on the run, Hannah gets in touch. She's in Oregon and reveals John abandoned her. The teenager wants to come back home. John remained on the run for 5.5 years using the alias Ben Klein. U.S. Marshals finally tracked him down in Medford, Oregon. John was finally behind bars. But then, a twist few saw coming. Hannah Thompson was also later arrested. Accused of helping Blauvelt the very day his wife was murdered, she's charged with 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of concealment of a felony, and 1 count of accessory after the fact for what police say is her part in dropping John off near Katie's workplace the day she was killed, lying about his whereabouts and helping him conceal evidence.